Thanks. Andy was my first boss, so to speak. I was lucky enough to have a lot of bosses. That red circle was way off. Al's over here. I don't know what the hell happened there. He's probably watching this on the webcast going, my God, he's targeting, and he still can't aim. All right. I don't want to say much about the great bosses I've had, except that they were great. And I know a lot of people in the world have had bad bosses, and I haven't had to endure that experience, and I'm very grateful to all of the people that I ever had to report to. They've just been incredible. But it's not just our bosses. We learn from our students. I think the best head fake of all time comes from Dr. Caitlin Keller, who just finished up here and is starting at Washington University. And she looked at Alice when it was an easier way to learn to program, and she said, yeah, but why is that fun? I was like, well, because I'm a compulsive male, like to make the little toy soldiers move around by my command, and that's fun. She was like, and she was the one who said, no, we'll just approach it all as a storytelling activity. And she's done wonderful work showing that, particularly with middle school girls, if you present it as a storytelling activity, they're perfectly willing to learn how to write computer software. So, all-time best head fake award goes to Caitlin Kelleher's dissertation. President Cohen, when I told him I was going to do this talk, he said, please tell them about having fun, because that's what I remember you for. And I said, I can do that, but it's kind of like a fish talking about the importance of water. I mean, I don't know how to not have fun, right? I'm dying and I'm having fun. And I'm going to keep having fun every day I have left, because there's no other way to play it, right? So my next piece of advice is, you just have to decide if you're a Tigger or you're an Eeyore. I think I'm clear where I stand on the great Tigger-Eeyore debate. Never lose the childlike wonder. It's just too important. It's what drives us. Help others. Denny Prophet knows more about helping other people. He's forgotten more than I'll ever know. He's taught me by example how to run a group, how to care about people. M.K. Haley, I have a theory that people who come from large families are better people because they've just had to learn how to get along. M.K. Haley comes from a family with 20 kids. Yeah, unbelievable. And she always says it's kind of fun to do the impossible. When I first got to Imagineering, she was one of the people who dressed me down. And she said, I understand you've joined the Aladdin Project. What can you do? And I said, well, I'm a tenured professor of computer science. And she said, well, that's very nice, Professor Boy, but that's not what I asked. I said, what can you do? And you know, I mentioned sort of my working class roots. We keep what is valuable to us, what we cherish, and I've kept my Letterman's jacket all these years. I used to like wearing it in grad school, and one of my friends, Jessica Hodgins, would say, why do you wear this Letterman's jacket? And I looked around at all the non-athletic guys around me who were much smarter than me, and I said, because I can. And so she thought that was a real hoot, so one year she made for me this little Raggedy Randy doll. And, he's got a little Letterman's jacket, too. That's my all-time favorite. It's the perfect gift for the egomaniac in your life. So I've met so many wonderful people along the way. Loyalty is a two-way street. There was a young man named Dennis Cosgrove at the University of Virginia. And when he was a young man, let's just say things happened. And I found myself talking to a dean. And the dean, no, not that dean. And anyway, this dean really had it in for Dennis, and I could never figure out why, because Dennis was a fine fellow. But for some reason, this dean really had it in for him. And I ended up basically saying, no, I vouch for Dennis. And the guy says, you're not even tenured yet. And you're telling me you're going to vouch for this sophomore or junior or whatever? I think it was a junior at the time. I said, yeah, I'm going to vouch for him because I believe in him. And the dean said, and I'm going to remember this when your tenure case comes up. I said, deal. I went back to talk to Dennis, and I said, I would really appreciate you. That would be good. But loyalty is a two-way street. I mean, that was God knows how many years ago, but that's the same Dennis Cosgrove who's carrying Alice forward. He's been with me all these years, right? And you know, if we only had one person to send in a space probe to meet an alien species, I'm picking Dennis. Okay? You can't give a talk at Carnegie Mellon without acknowledging one very special person, and that would be Sharon Burks. I mean, I joked with her, I said, well, look, if you're retiring, it's just not worth living anymore. Sharon is so wonderful, it's beyond description. And for all of us who've been helped by her, it's just indescribable. I love this picture because it puts her together with Syl. And Syl is great because Syl gave the best piece of advice, pound for pound, that I have ever heard. And I think all young ladies should hear this. Syl said, it took me a long time, but I finally figured it out. When it comes to men that are romantically interested in you, it's really simple. Just ignore everything they say and only pay attention to what they do. It's that simple. It's that easy. And I thought back to my bachelor days and I said, damn. Never give up. I didn't get into Brown University. I was on the wait list. I called them up and they eventually decided that it was getting really annoying to have me call every day, so they let me in. At Carnegie Mellon, I didn't get into graduate school. Andy had mentored me. He said, go to graduate school, you're going to Carnegie Mellon. All my good students go to Carnegie Mellon. And yeah, you know what's coming. And so he said, you're going to go to Carnegie Mellon, no problem. What he had kind of forgotten was that the difficulty of getting into the top PhD program in the country had really gone up. And he also didn't know I was going to tank my GREs, because he believed in me, which, based on my board scores, was a really stupid idea. And so I didn't get into Carnegie Mellon. No one knows this till today. I'm telling the story. I was declined admission to Carnegie Mellon. And I was a bit of an obnoxious little kid. I went into Andy's office, and I dropped the rejection letter on his desk. And I said, I just want you to know what your letter of recommendation goes for at Carnegie Mellon. And before the letter had hit his desk, his hand was on the phone, and he said, I will fix this. And I said, no, I don't want to do it that way. That's not the way I was raised. You know, maybe some other graduate schools will see fit to admit me. And he said, look, Carnegie Mellon's where you're going to be. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. Go visit the other schools, because I did get into all the other schools. He said, go visit the other schools, and if you really don't feel comfortable at any of them, then will you let me call Nico? Nico being Nico Haberman. And I said, okay, deal. I went to the other schools without naming them by name. Berkeley, Cornell. They managed to be so unwelcoming that I found myself saying to Andy, you know, I'm going to go get a job. And he said, no, you're not. And he picked up the phone and he talked in Dutch. And he hung up the phone and he said, Nico says if you're serious, be in his office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And for those of you who know Nico, this is really scary. So I'm in Nico Haberman's office the next morning at 8 a.m. and he's talking with me. And frankly, I don't think he's that keen on this meeting, Dan. I don't think he's that keen at all. And he says, Randy, why are we here? And I said, because Andy phoned you? And I said, well, since you admitted me, I have won a fellowship. The Office of Naval Research is a very prestigious fellowship. I've won this fellowship, and that wasn't in my file when I applied. And Nico said, a fellowship, money, we have plenty of money. That was back then. And he said, we have plenty of money. Why do you think having a fellowship makes any difference to us? And he looked at me. There are moments that change your life. And 10 years later, if you know, in retrospect, it was one of those moments, you're blessed. But to know it at the moment, with Nico staring through your soul. And I said, I didn't mean to imply anything about the money. It's just that it was an honor. There were only 15 given nationwide. And I did think it was an honor that would be something that would be meritorious. And I apologize if that was presumptuous. And he smiled. And that was good. So, how do you get people to help you? You can't get there alone. People have to help you, and I do believe in karma. I believe in paybacks. You get people to help you by telling the truth, being earnest. I'll take an earnest person over a hip person every day, because hip is short-term. Earnest is long-term. Apologize when you screw up. and focus on other people, not on yourself. And I thought, how do I possibly make a concrete example of that? Do we have a concrete example of focusing on somebody else over there? Can we bring it out? See, yesterday was my wife's birthday. If there was ever a time I might be entitled to have the focus on me, it might be the last lecture. But no, I feel very badly that my wife didn't really get a proper birthday, and I thought it'd be